Hey, podcast listener, even if you are alone in your entrepreneurial pursuit, know that today, right now in your earbuds, you are joined by thousands of entrepreneurs all around the globe seeking to do the same thing you are. If you want to know more about this program or this podcast, or want to get barraged by a lot of annoying pop-ups, check out our website, lifestylebusinesspodcast.com.
Yeah, buddy, happy Thursday morning. It's episode 130 of the Lifestyle Business Podcast, where we believe building a business is the best way to get more personal freedom and opportunity in your life. Speaking of opportunities, I'm joined today by my captain, my co-host, a man who thought Men in Black was about guys with positive cash flow businesses. Welcome to the program, Ian.
Nice.
The LBP joke reservoir, the monkeys in the back room writing those jokes. I think they're being worked too hard, buddy.
I think that's a good one.
A couple new iTunes reviews this week. We got 5 stars from Dan O'Connell, who says, "These guys are my mentors from afar." And KU Artist says, "Love it. Look forward to this show every single week." Thank you guys for going to that clunky iTunes interface and dropping the love for the LBP. Speaking of the love, check out the LBP listeners section at our website. Notables such as James Shramko from Italy sent his picture in, listening to the LBP in front of a cool cafe. I think it was called Tropical Cafe, reminded him of us. Check out Jesse the Dominator Lawler from far atop a volcano. That's the kind of thing the Dominator would do. Scale a volcano listening to this podcast. Melissa from Down Under, and Greg V with the dash cam. And apparently some of these new cars, you can actually put the podcast right on your dashboard. Pretty cool.
Yeah,
huh?
I think Greg was in a new 328. By the way, I talked to Jesse, the Dominator, I think it was last night, 2 nights ago, and he had to buy a pair of pants because now he's in, I think, Buenos Aires. I said, ooh, have fun in those pants, buddy.
Yeah, there's a cool thread in the DC called "You're in the DC when," and the extension on your trousers is a big issue. The first thing that I did when I came back to Bali was I cut off my jeans. And I wear cutoff jeans. That's how little I care. It's like the most unfashionable move ever. Heinrich from Denmark writes this: "I got to tell you guys, I love this podcast, and I can't recommend it to enough people. So thank you guys for making my life better." And Heinrich has made our lives better by dropping us a quick tip, which we'll share with you guys at the end of the episode. Remember back in the day, Heinrich might be in the oversharing phase. I went through a phase with that with Internet Business Mastery, Ian.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. You try and spread the love a little bit too hard. You try and push in your ideas and your and what's going on in your life to strangers, basically.
Yeah, so I love the because Heinrich's not he's sharing against resistance. It's not just everybody's pumped to hear about this stuff. It's you got to fight. When I first started listening to Internet Business Mastery, I was this weird evangelical type, I would be in the checkout lane at the grocery store, and I'd be like, "Let me ask you a question. Do you want to change your life today?" People would be like, "Well, what's going on, dude? It's $27. And I'd be like, "No, it's free, and it's Internet Business Mastery. Download it today and listen." And they'd be like, "Dude, I don't even know what a podcast is, and you're freaking me out. So just please, paper or plastic, dude. Paper or plastic." So Heinrich,
That's
thanks for.
awesome, man. Yeah, it's like trying to convince somebody that listen, this is the best part of the song. Keep listening. This is a good song. It's coming up. Did you hear that?
Listen to that solo, man. Hey, speaking of cool stuff, you're having a DC meetup in SoCal. Tell us the details, man.
Yeah, good point. So we're going to have a DC SoCal meetup. It's not exclusive to DC members. I actually made that mistake. I said on Twitter, I said DC meetup. Okay, yes, it's a DC meetup. There will be plenty of DCers there, but I would love to see your shining non-DC face. It's going to be on November 30th. We're going to probably start, that's a Friday, we'll probably start around 2 p.m. I don't know, maybe do some business breakdowns, talk shop, work our way into the magic hour, have a couple drinks, see where it goes from there. I am really excited, though. I think a couple people are coming down from LA, and just looking forward to meeting a lot of new people and talking shop, man.
Very cool. All right, Ian, how do you feel about a little bit of meat and potatoes? Today's topic is how to be a happy sociopath.
Well, this is Thanksgiving. Maybe turkey and stuffing? What do you think?
Sure. turkey and stuffing for dinner, and with a side dish of sociopath. And I'm looking at you, entrepreneur. Yes, I invited my friend Ian onto the show because I thought he would be an appropriate guest. All right, so what's a sociopath, Ian? This is an idea that we got from Ribbonfarm.com, and we've been talking about this a little bit. This week's Tropical MBA blog post was about reality. And Ray Dalio, in his Principles document, which is really cool, and we'll provide that for download at this episode 130, talks a lot about his concern with reality. Because as entrepreneurs, our role is to manipulate reality. We're trying to bring about outcomes. And so understanding, having an accurate perception of how things really go down is where we want to be. So what Venkat did over at Ribbonfarm was he created a whole document, a whole series of blog posts about the company hierarchy. Basically, at the very top, you have sociopaths. Implicitly, those are the entrepreneurs, the people that are owning the company. In the middle, you have this big group of people that are the clueless. And at the bottom, you have the largest group, the losers, the people that are being manipulated or led along a path that's not of their choosing. And so we're gonna walk people through, and we're gonna talk about how to be a happy sociopath in 3 areas of your life, and it would be time management, money management, and relationship management.
Yeah, buddy. So you're a sociopath. I'm a sociopath. Is that how that goes? Because we own a business.
I like using the term sociopath because it like sparks a rise. It like gets your attention. Of course, we're not talking about being real sociopaths. We're talking about being people who want to understand and manipulate reality. They want to play the game of life rather than be gamed by life. I think that's the difference. So I'll start off this episode with a mantra for each level of the company hierarchy. What would the clueless person say? Because the clueless person is in the middle. They're going to say, everything happens for a reason. The loser is going to say, why aren't these good reasons working out for me? People said that if I followed this stuff, it would work. Or the loser might say, some losers say, screw those reasons because they're not working out for me, so F them. The sociopath is going to say, what's the reason this happened, and how can I manipulate those things in the future? How can I make sure that those factors play to my benefit? All right, let's talk about it relative to time management. And again, this is all about breaking rules, defining your own path forward in life, and not just being one of those clueless losers in the middle who is just going with the flow.
Yeah, so essentially we are promoting, or we're basically saying this is a way forward to act as a sociopath. And the reason why you want to act as a sociopath is because you can get shit done this way. You can, because essentially you build rules and you form a way forward.
Like the whole sociopath thing, don't get caught up on that. That's like a cynical verbiage because it's clever and it's cool. But I do think that there is something sort of inherently gritty or cynical or realistic. There's a lot of people in life, Ian, that they don't like to look at people's real motivations because it like destroys the poetry for them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's what you were saying with like everything happens for a reason. And so the interesting thing about the sociopath, I think there's like a clinical definition basically that says like you don't care about the emotions of people around you. And I think that there's some of that going on, but really what we're talking about, I think the sociopath in terms of business is you can disconnect from the emotions of what's happening around you. Whereas the clueless person and the loser in this company hierarchy may not be able to do that.
That's a good point. So it's like you can strategically disconnect from things that are not critically important to you and your objectives. And of course, look, like let's make sure that all this is happening in the context of like a moral, good life and all that kind of stuff. But I do think it's interesting. There is this caught upness that clueless and losers, people that are not in control of their life, they sort of get caught up in the flow. And the whole idea that the sociopath is being able to step back and say, you know what, I'm not going to get caught up in that. I've made a decision that that's not how I'm going to roll. So anyway, let's talk about some specifics here. So first off, time management. How do losers and clueless people think of time management? And again, these are people that are not defining the path of their own lives. They're not being entrepreneurial.
Okay, so the clueless people, in terms of time management, let their time be defined by organizations. The organization sets up a rule and they subscribe to the rule, and that's how they spend their time. So what would be an example of that, Dan?
I think that's a classic example of having the great job. And the key difference is that the sociopath in the great job knows that the great job is contributing to their ultimate outcomes, whereas the clueless person, they subscribe to the objectives of the organization without even considering what their objectives are. And then the losers at the very bottom of the food chain here, they're just looking for stuff to join. They're just looking for ways they're randomly searching the internet for time spends because they don't even know what they would want to do with their own time, if they even had it or when they do have it. So what does the sociopath do? What does the entrepreneur do? They're defining their time usage in order to create the ideal outcomes that they're looking for in their lives. So this is sort of an interesting thing to me. I had an interesting experience the other day. I looked at a set of notes that Jeff Picaro, who's a listener of the podcast, thank you, Jeff, for sending me notes about the Tim Ferriss talk, where he talked about how he was writing his book, because Jeff knows I'm writing a book. And the interesting thing about it is Tim, when he's in writing phase, only meets with his friends 1 day a week. And the rest of the week, he is 100% hidden inside of his writing hole. And I think that's interesting because in many ways, Tim has more time demands than the average person. Everybody wants a piece of him. Yet, when you pull back the curtain and look at what's actually happening in his life, we called it, he's being an obsessive chipmunk, right? Like he is in his cave writing, even though there's so much demand on his time. You don't walk into Tim Ferriss's house and find a normal life. You find the life of a guy who's writing these amazing books. And I think somehow there tends to be amongst losers and clueless people that he's just a normal guy and he just happens to be really good at writing and he writes a little bit every day and man, he came up with this great book. No, that's not how it happens. You find an obsessive sociopath holed up in his little den, only meeting with friends once a week.
And so that's what we try to do. A lot of times, me and you both do this with our time so we can spend more time on business. And so that means that we essentially stop doing what a lot of normal people do, which is like go shopping or things like that. So I got a couple examples in my life of ways that I've started to own my time more over the past couple of years. You know, you look at like a guy like Steve Jobs, as long as we're talking about relatively famous people, and he wore the same wardrobe every day. And that was his uniform. And part of the reason why he did that was so he wouldn't have to make a choice about what to wear every day, because that takes energy. And you think, well, that's not very cool. Like you can't express yourself. Like you can't wear cool shirts. And it's like the way that Steve Jobs expressed himself was not through his clothing. Like that was like the most unimportant aspect of his life, probably. Like he was looking to express himself and his creativity through his products. And so, you know, for guys like me and you, that might mean like, you know, we do old man things. Like we buy the same pair of like Reebok Classics when we need a pair of shoes, right? The white Reebok Classics. Like, yeah, I've been wearing them for 20 years. And like now I kind of respect my my elders for doing that, because I understand that they had more important things to do.
Yeah, you know, when you pull back the curtain on this stuff, there is absolutely no secret sauce. I think that's always fascinating. Like the answer to like why Tim Ferriss writes great books or to why X person grew a multi-million-dollar business, it's always duh. The answer is always duh. They worked harder than anybody else at it. They put more, like that number one violinist at the front of the orchestra didn't come out of the womb fiddling strings better than anybody else, right? They sat at that violin for hours and hours and hours. And I think the question for us as people who want to make these decisions in our lives is, are we being conscious about this? This made me think about this a little bit because I just moved in with a new roommate who didn't know me that well. And I thought about it the other day, like this guy must think I'm crazy because my schedule is 100% optimized for work. Like, cause I'm working on a book. So it's like, I take a nap at the same time every day. I exercise at the same time every day. I eat the same stuff. I don't talk to anybody. I don't hang out. You know what I mean? It's like this weird, this guy must think I'm just absolutely nutbags.
Probably thinks you're a sociopath. Yeah.
But again, it's that old adage, Ian, of if if you want to live like nobody else, live like nobody else, you know? And if everybody else around you is doing the normal stuff, and again, that's what we're talking about with like clueless, loser, like if you're just following the path, well, then you're going to follow the path. All right, let's talk about money a little bit. What are the clueless guys doing? What are the losers doing?
Speaking of money, I think, isn't that what Dave Ramsey says? Live like nobody else so you can live like nobody else? Him and maybe a lot of other people.
Sorry, I pulled a sociopathic move and I didn't attribute it. A loser, Ian, credit card debt.
Yeah, a loser, essentially, their finances are controlled by other people outside of their life. So they have like creditors that control their life, essentially, and control what they buy and how they spend their time. I can't quit my job because I'm in credit card debt. And, those were bad decisions. Those were loser decisions that you made in the first place to get into credit card debt. The next level is somebody that's clueless. And a lot of times these people are subscribing to forums, or they're subscribing to institutions. So you might have your money locked up in something like mutual funds. And a lot of times, mutual funds aren't necessarily a bad thing if you've got excess cash. I'm talking about the guy that's got $500 in his bank account and $10,000 in his mutual fund account, and he has no flexibility or liquidity because of it.
Yeah, and I think I see clueless people with money as people who like believe in institutions, like believe that institutions are going to save them. You know, like whether that's like Social Security or like X fund manager or whatever. Like clueless people are looking to opt into some kind of like, quote, some kind of trusted societal mechanism that's going to make them wealthy or that's going to save them and make their lives comfortable. Whereas a sociopath knows that institution that they're subscribing to is run by a bunch of sociopaths. Like they get it, right? So they're not going to just go dump all of their money into a mutual fund and hope that it works out. They're going to be thinking more strategically. So let's talk about some of the things that a sociopath might do with their money.
Yeah, so I've helped like a bunch of close friends recently. I don't know why I've become this person, but I've helped a bunch of loser friends become sociopath when it comes to money. And there's a couple steps that I think you need to take in order to be able to do that.
Wow. You've got a system. We could sell this, buddy,
Yeah,
the $97 the sociopath way. All right, let's hear it.
Yeah, so the trick here is to get yourself out of debt if you're in debt, because that's a really bad position to be in for precisely the reason that I said before, which is you can't start a business. I had a friend that was in this exact situation. They really wanted to start a business, but they really had to show up to their job every day because they had a huge amount of credit card debt. So the game becomes then, how do I get out of credit card debt as fast as possible so I can start a business? Especially if you don't have somebody that can lend you that money. So it's a really easy plan, and it's a 3-step plan, and I think it works relatively well. So the first thing you need to do is you need to cut all unnecessary spending. This includes cable. Unless your job or something depends on it. So, I mean, really everything. Look at your life inventory.
Let me get meta sociopathic on this. The biggest thing that you're spending on cable isn't your money, it's your time. So that's why you should cut cable. A lot of people ask me, have you watched X movie? My answer to you is no, I have not watched X movie. And the reason is I don't watch movies. And the reason is that movies don't get me to my objectives. I know that's again, pull back the curtain, it gets crazy. There's crazy behind it. You know what I mean?
There's definitely crazy behind it. So in my friend's example, she had to stop getting her nails did. The next thing you got to do is you got to get the most aggressive about what you can pay every month on that debt. So once you figure out what your baseline is, I have to spend $1,000. These are my essentials every month. Then you get really aggressive about figuring out what your maximum contribution is to your creditors. And the third thing, and this is the most important, and this is what we've talked about before with your cash budget, Dan, that you've described many times. Instead of paying your creditor with what's left over at the end of the month, you pay them with what you've allocated at the beginning of the month. So what happens a lot of times is you say, okay, well, at the end of the month, I'm left with $300. I guess that's what I'll send to my creditor. No, that's not the answer. At the beginning of the month, at the beginning of your plan, you say, I have allocated, I know every month that I can afford based on my budget to pay my creditors $800. You take that out on the first of the month and you pay your creditors. And then, this is the scary part, on the back end, you have to figure your life out. So that really makes you work for it. And it's the same thing with credit, right? It's like you gotta you got to have the money first before you can buy the new car, or you can buy it on credit and not have the money. So it's like you continue to do the same cycle if you just pay the creditors what you have left at the end of the month.
Finally, let's talk about how a happy sociopath deals with relationships. So real quick, we'll dispense with losers and clueless. The losers, losers are either going to be disengaged socially. They're going to be not reaching out to people. They're going to be not developing relationships, or they're going to be constantly roped into random drama situations. It's like everything has a 1-to-1 ratio with them. It's like if someone says something to them, like they're going to feel it full on, you know what I mean? Like rather than deciding how that's going to impact them. Whereas
I found myself in a loser situation, a loser relationship a couple weeks ago. And you really have to stop yourself. And in my case, I just had to cut the person off altogether, because you really get roped into these relationships. I didn't even realize it until I was like a week in, and I was like, oh man, this guy's making me out to be a loser, sucking all my time. And actually, it like cost me quite a bit of money, but it was worth it to pay my way out of the relationship. I had like become buddies with this guy. I had a motorcycle and I needed the transmission rebuilt on it, and that's not something that I have time to take on right now. And so I had contracted him to rebuild my transmission and my motorcycle to the tune of about $2,000. And so basically, he tried and he failed once, and then he had the bike again, and it was just getting ridiculous. Like it was getting to the point where I realized that this guy didn't really know what he was doing. And so I think it was like the third try, I got the motorcycle back from him, and it still wasn't working. And like I had a decision to make. Like either I was gonna like have it out with this guy verbally, or I was gonna like sue this guy, or I was gonna like try and get my money back somehow. Anyway, I sliced it. Like I was gonna spend copious amounts of time trying to get my money back. And so what I decided to do was just walk away with it. So, and that's a hard, there's no way I could have done that a couple years ago. One, I didn't have $2,000 disposable income to do that with, but it really makes sense for me these days, like to not even get into it with this guy, to just walk away, say I made a mistake, it cost me $2,000. I don't have to engage with this person ever again in my life. And that was the real benefit for me, is that I didn't have to talk or deal with this person again. And that cost me $2,000.
Right. So, we brought it up the other day. We were talking about what happens when somebody threatens you. And there is this tendency for people that are not yet sociopathic to think that when someone threatens you or says something bad about you, that has like a direct correlation with the reality of who you are. And so all of a sudden, like when someone threatens you, your reality is 100% defined by them. Whereas a sociopath decides what role they want to play in that criticism or in that threat. And this is directly related to something I often call like conditioning your soul. And I think this is like highly sociopathic, which is you do this a lot, and so do I, which is that you decide which emotions that you're going to allow yourself to have. So you sort of like you have like this rational overlord of what emotions you're going to let play out in your system, because what ends up happening is like those things condition you and they become who you are, and that becomes how you emote. So if you let yourself get freaked out like every single time someone threatens you, then you're going to be a slave to that. Like you will constantly let other people define your reality forever. But as a sociopath, you can come in and say, look, like I'm not going to allow myself to feel that way because it's inaccurate and it's not useful and it sucks. It makes me feel bad.
Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon, and I think a lot of people, especially the losers and the people in the middle, the clueless people, they really hate this because you can control your emotions as a sociopath, so to speak. And I don't know, I think maybe it comes off like a little bit unnatural, but like my buddy who was with me at the time when I decided to just not confront this guy about the $2,000 motorcycle repair, he just like couldn't get it through his head that like I didn't want revenge and like I didn't want to like take this further. And the truth is like I couldn't afford for this guy to like ruin the next couple like hours or even days of my life. And so I had to decide which kind of emotions I was going to have. And for me, it was happiness. I thought, you know what, I'm happy about this. Now I can move on with my life. Whereas a lot of people, they might have been mad or something like that.
It is this idea that people that aren't in the more sociopathic layer, it is always like everybody deserves 1-to-1, right? So it's like the gearing that you're in with others is always 1-to-1 for the losers. It's like some guy threatens you, you have to deal with that. Some guy tries to rip you off, you have to deal with that. Well, the sociopath just says, those are situations that I don't participate in. It's like, there's this group of people in my life that make me feel bad. I don't talk to them at all, ever, again, never. When they send me an email, I delete it. Like, that's a sociopathic move, whereas I feel like some people, and oftentimes rightly, they feel uncomfortable with that move, right? So what they'd rather do is deal with it, right? So I'm going to deal with this person that makes me feel bad, or I'm going to deal with this person that doesn't contribute to my aims. Whereas I think the sociopath just says, you know what? I'm never going to look at an email from that person again because I can't believe she broke up with me. What a cold heart. Okay, let's get moving on to just the tips. All right, hey, one thing I want to clarify about all this sociopathic, loser, clueless stuff is like those are offensive terms by purpose, like to get your attention and to like bring people into the thinking and stuff. Obviously we don't think anybody's a loser, really clueless, and like we all have all of these elements in us. So I just want to say it's all for good fun. There's no real losers out there, and Ian and I are the biggest losers. We'll raise our hands first when it comes to the loser poll. So
I agree 100% with what you're saying. They could just be like personality types or traits number 1, 2, 3. I mean, these are the. Luckily, we had this framework from Venkat. This is the pyramid that he laid out, and so we're kind of working within this framework.
Just the tips. All right, Ian, we'll make it quick. This is we wanted to be a quick episode, but I think me and you geek out on this like pop cheap psychology stuff. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts if you have any thoughts on being sociopathic. Speaking of notes, while we're on it, hey, I'm loving Evernote, Ian. I just want to reiterate that by investing in Evernote and by doubling down on this piece of software, it really has made me more prolific in terms of especially creative work. And what I've done is Evernote does a little bit of everything. So, when I announced that I used Evernote to do my travel plans, it was like this huge scandal in the DC that I didn't use TripIt. So I'm experimenting with TripIt, but I gotta say, guys and gals, that one thing I like about Evernote is that it can be the only application you use. So I use Evernote I'm still using it for my travel documents. I'm using it for my contacts. I'm using it as a writing environment. I'm using it as an ideation environment. Anyway, I'm still loving Evernote. I just wanted to be clear about that and encourage the listeners, because I know you got to hear things a couple times. You get on board with stuff, but it's been a game changer for me, especially given that your best ideas, Ian, you have them while you're walking around, while you're at the restaurant, and not only can you then put all of those ideas right into your creative environment, which is where you're writing. I'm writing in Evernote, but it can happen the other way around too, which is anything I've ever put into Evernote, I can access on my phone. All right, so finally, Heinrich from Denmark writes that you can go to Fiverr, Ian. Speaking of sociopathic, this is why I included it. He says for $5, you can get someone to max out your referrals and get 18 free gigs of storage on top of your free Dropbox account. Congratulations,
Yeah, that's
Heinrich.
sneaky. I've heard of people doing this before, but so essentially what you do is like the more people you refer to Dropbox, the more space you get.
Yeah, slow clap to Heinrich for the sociopathic quick tip. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us this Thursday morning. Today we'll play you out with Icarus by Medion. It's rocking, and it's on my book writing playlist, which is full of stuff that keeps me productive. All right, Ian, let's go get productive. I'll see you next Thursday morning.
Booyah!
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. Don't be shy. We've got a mailing list, lifestylebusinesspodcast.com. Go there, get yourself signed up, and we'll keep you up to date on everything we